Welcome back to McNulty's Book Corral. Today we're going to talk about Claude McKay. Claude McKay was born in 1890 and he died in 1948. Claude McKay is best known for this book, and I'll have scans, of course, which is Home to Harlem, which was published in 1928. And this was one of the first books in the Harlem Renaissance. I first encountered Claude McKay's works through his poetry in the 1970s. Boy, I do this retro stuff now and again, don't I? And it was, I believe it was his collected poems. I'm not sure. I don't have a copy of it. I do have, in addition to Home to Harlem, I have Harlem Shadows, which is poems. I believe this was his third and final collection of poetry. A lot of interesting sonnets in here. This is the Modern Library current edition that I recommend that you pick up. Slender volume, but with really good poems by Claude McKay, including many sonnets, if you like the sonnet form. Claude McKay was a pivotal writer in the Harlem Renaissance, and when I encountered his poetry way back when in the day, I struck up an affinity for his work. It's interesting to see how some of these writers come back into the public consciousness. You know, for example, there's currently a kind of a renaissance of interest in Claude McKay's work because of two posthumous books that have been released. I have one of the two, which is Romance in Marseille, and again, I'll have scans of this popping up for you. This was just published, and it has an introduction that explains its tortured history, finding its way back into someone's hands so that they can publish it. A very interesting book, much different than Home to Harlem. Home to Harlem is a book that I consider to be one of the great classics of American fiction from this period. This period in the 20s and 30s is really a golden age, and into the 40s too, for all of the creative arts. The Harlem Renaissance was very much a part of that, a truly fascinating and interesting part of history to study. So McKay put himself right there on the map with this, right along with those other famous writers who perhaps get a little more attention than he does, such as Ernest Hemingway and F. Scott Fitzgerald and Robert Nathan, all writers that I'm sure you're familiar with. And now you can familiarize yourself with the late great Claude McKay. This is an interesting book, obviously detailing the black experience in the United States. It is a vivid recounting of it. It talks about on the back, the alienation and frustration of urban blacks during an era when Harlem was in vogue. The Harlem Renaissance is a fascinating period, as I've mentioned, to study. I have an affinity for it for a lot of personal reasons I'm not going to go into here, but that relates to my childhood and the people that I knew. So I was very much aware of the Harlem Renaissance at a very early age and what those creative souls were like. Dizzy Gillespie, Langston Hughes, Claude McKay, and so many others. If you want to check into that. Home to Harlem. And then definitely you want to get into his poetry. I need to pick up the collected poems that I read years ago in a library where it stuck with me. I just really like his style. He does a rhyming scheme. These are sonnets, formal form, but they're not cutesy pie things. He's writing. You see, Claude McKay was a realist, and he wrote what he saw and felt, and he doesn't hold things back, which is what the better writers do. So you get that with him, and then with this Romance in Marseille, this is really a kind of an American Gothic tale from him. And it's just been re-released a few years ago, released for the first time a few years ago, and it's just a magnificent work. I wouldn't put it quite up there with Home to Harlem, but certainly a great addition to the Claude McKay library that we should have when you're studying American fiction. Just fantastic. Interesting, and it ends in a way I totally never expected. Dark. This is a dark, moody, gritty piece of modernism, realism, for those of you interested in that type of unabridged and unabashed and uncensored type of thing. Interesting piece of work from Claude McKay. A wonderful writer. A little look back for me. Again, one of these writers I discovered quite some time ago that I'm still quite fond of, and I have in my personal library here, as well you should, and I hope you do. I hope you find these books interesting and that you'll pick up some of these books. Again, Romance in Marseille by Claude McKay, Harlem Shadows, and Home to Harlem, the classic work of a literary genius here. Home to Harlem by Claude McKay, right up there with Hemingway and Robert Nathan and all of these other writers. This is a classic American novel. And that is my plug for a little retro look back at the late, great Claude McKay. I hope you're well. I hope you're reading. Stay well, keep reading, and I will see you right along that dusty trail.